Aria Ingram's Diaries. In the previous episode, a glitch occurs. For the first time, the message "Aria, wake up" is displayed. Aria is transported to the past to the year 3052 on Earth 1 in the Moonstone galaxy. She experiences the memories of a girl, Megan Twinkle, and her mother. A fugitive Federation commander is arrested. Aria's consciousness returns to the Archon in the year 3158. The crew discovers an energy sphere hidden beneath the deck through a crack in the cockpit floor. Before reaching Hades, a masked ninja appears. Chapter 3. Stalemate in Hades. A web of lies. Entry continued on the 55th day of the year 3158 of the new era at 9 p.m. Earth time. The Archon is located in an unregulated quadrant beyond the Federation's control at the Hades base on the former route to New Antarctica.
In the abyss of the galaxy, everything is shrouded in mystery. That evening we came face to face with yet another masked opponent, a ninja. The worst part was that we were still trapped between the Federation agents and Empton's revenge. Their pale, slender bodies, square heads, piercing horizontal pupils, and snake-like agility. These were the modern-day Emptonians. Their predecessors were said to be even uglier and crueler. Another time jump occurred. We traversed a week's worth of time in just one Earth day. The Moonstone was on the horizon. Time stretched and rippled like a comet's mane. From the asteroid belt, we reached the galactic border, following the old route to New Antarctica. Long ago, this stellar corridor was heavily guarded by the Federation, until it became the path to Hades. We were all disoriented, even the Archon, which continued to feed us event scenarios while remaining partially outside our control. It looked like sabotage. Some unknown force, perhaps the sphere beneath the deck, was disrupting the ship's systems. I stood before the ninja, uncertain of the future, just like everyone else on board. Time froze for us. Suddenly, from the depths of the floor, the sphere emitted a pink beam, paralyzing the intruder. The light dimmed ominously in the cockpit. Then a series of stroboscopic flashes slashed through the darkness, capturing our terrified figures in various poses. Something, or someone, was playing with us. The lights returned as suddenly as they had vanished, blinding us with an intense pink glow. There was a calming force within it, one that suppressed aggression. "Archon, weapons status?" Lee asked. "Defense systems out of control," the ship responded. In an instant, Eagle lost his camouflage. Lee straightened up, and the ninja was hurled toward the emergency hatch, as if sucked into a vacuum. He slammed against the titanium outer plating with a loud thud. "Aria, situation report," Lee muttered, his voice strained. "The sphere beneath us has neutralized the intruder," I replied matter-of-factly. Then I turned to the most likely scenario. This could be an agent sent by the Federation. "Archon, report on the foreign passenger." The data suggests he has a mission or a resource of valuable cells, necessary for survival in an unknown atmosphere. The intruder has been classified as a lost artifact, and the interface responded. "He could have been trapped in the sphere but escaped onto the deck during my transfer," I said, exchanging a knowing look with the captain. "The sphere might be defending access to the hatch where the intruder is stuck," Lee concluded, a deep line of thought forming on his forehead. "Archon, activate security protocols," Lee ordered. "Let's stay on alert until we understand what's going on." "Crew safety, 50%. An unknown force controls half of the ship's defense systems." "Acknowledged. We leave it at that," the captain responded. "Eagle, are you all right?" I asked. my voice carrying an unusual level of empathy. "I don't feel uplifted, but I'm alive. This is impressive. Sneaking onto the ship like a freeloader, and the sphere is on our side. Then, I suppose camouflage is unnecessary." Eagle added a touch of mockery in the face of danger, deliberately downplaying the problem to help himself adjust to the situation. Eagle's predatory nature made his moods compulsive, but I was beginning to appreciate his adaptability. As a golden eagle, he once had no greater enemy than humans, yet he had joined us. Beast or bird, survival instinct was his ally, even in the vacuum of space. Together with him, at the mercy of the Archon, we were slowly regaining balance. Regeneration required. Crew health status demands immediate action, engaging autopilot, Archon announced. Or maybe it was the sphere speaking through the ship. We had no choice but to be patient. The sphere put us all to sleep within minutes, and we entered hibernation, standing upright. Several Earth days passed, and the ship felt as if possessed by a foreign force. When we woke, we weren't fully aware of what had happened. We felt relatively safe, and the ninja had been reprogrammed by the sphere into a harmless state. At least, that's what the log said. For now, the intruder remained silent, and we had no full access to him. We decided to take him to Hades, let the president of the Fallen loosen his tongue. After several failed attempts, we removed the ninja's mask. He was covered in thick fur, resembling a primate, and his posture shifted into that of a hunched creature. His 2-meter stature shrank to barely 1.5 meters. After checking our vital signs, the Archon, likely under the influence of the sphere, hibernated us once more. But this time, each of us was escorted by the interface to our respective quarters. Several hours later, I was the first to wake up. My repair program activated, stimulating activity in my cerebral lobes. I awoke with a jolt of terror. Without hesitation, I rushed to the captain's quarters and called out, "Lee, wake up. We need to talk. We're all in one piece, but you need to explain something to me. You've been avoiding this subject for a while, but I have a few questions. How exactly did you buy me?" Lee rubbed his eyelids and squinted. "What do you want, Aria? Give me a moment. Where are we?" "Getting closer to Hades. Something pulled me out of regeneration. Otherwise, I wouldn't have woken you up. I need answers. I'm missing some strategic data." "One thing at a time, Aria. First, we need to interrogate the intruder. If he's an old enemy, he could be an even greater threat." Lee sat comfortably in the middle of the bed and commanded the Archon, "Ensure that the foreign passenger remains restrained." "Confirmed. Neutralizing the intruder. Threat level at 1%, the interface responded. "Lee, tell me, how did you get here?" "For some reason, I can't access the records of Archon's purchase. I need your help," I said in a tone of sincere plea. "Fine. Archon, retrieve all logs related to the ship's acquisition and replacement parts. Exclude crew-related purchases." Then he turned to me. "Aria, use your access code and check if we're still connected to the sphere. We need to regain full control of the ship. The purchase records must be here somewhere." "Captain, it's starting to make sense. I have access to the sphere," I said, as realization struck. "Aria, wake up!" The voice of the Archon boomed, resonating through the entire hull like a thunderclap of metal. "Oh no, not again." This time, it was smoother than the last awakening. It wasn't another malfunction, but rather a seamless integration of my circuits with the sphere, granting me access to Archon's old logs. It felt like solving a Rubik's Cube in Einstein's hands, a once insurmountable puzzle now reduced to a boring and predictable game. I stared into the iridescent walls of the sphere, yet at the same time, I was right beside Lee. I couldn't explain it, but it felt as though I was beginning to bilocate. The captain seemed unusually irritated, though he masked it well. Everything he felt, he conveyed to me in a single glance. I once again had access to his thought patterns and emotions. It felt like rummaging through his closet, a place I wasn't sure I wanted to be. It reminded me of our first encounter, when I was chained to the floor of a hangar, losing power bit by bit, slowly dying in a forgotten mechanics warehouse at the abandoned Prometheus port. I had lost hope. Then, Lee appeared, with an empty ID tag and eyes full of stars. A disgraced officer wandering through a mildewed spaceport, hunting for scrap and spare parts. At that time, I was nothing more than a pile of components to scavengers and smugglers. Yet somehow, Lee saw a soul in me. I had barely escaped recycling. Some said the Archon was haunted, others claimed it was infested with nanobots. A horror story. They didn't know how to handle me. A primitive tribe of hybrids, unable to distinguish an agent from a decoy, cheap black market implants. Lee was burning with planet fever back then, still wearing his shiny black boots, the only remnant of his fleet service. He arrived carrying a sleek black toolbox, like a galactic mobster. He activated every diagnostic scan available, attempting to haggle my price down to scrap value. I felt a mix of disgust and admiration. He was proud of his find. Once, the Federation Air's finest research vessel, and I, Aria, the lone navigator. Not a trace of aging, hundreds of missions, yet zero respect, a laughingstock of the galaxy. Nothing could have humiliated me more than decommissioning. I knew every trade route in the Federation. I understood humans better than they knew themselves. I provided entertainment, satisfied desires, indulged every whim, all for human vanity. They created me, yet now they discarded me like a broken toy. That was human nature. Luckily, in that hopeless moment, someone exceptional appeared. I remember the first time Lee looked at me, the way his brow furrowed in surprise, his bloodshot eyes scanning my remains. He tried to act indifferent. The ship couldn't reach hyperspace, so the clever buyer said that the Archon and I were fit only for cadet training or as a floating dormitory among the rocks, on a planet where even hybrids refuse to reproduce. His wild mane and warrior stance left no doubts. He was a fighter, but also lost. Keeping his composure, he simply shrugged. He told the junk dealers he would try to fix me, but if he failed, he wouldn't waste a single token on salvaging the Archon. He wanted 2 for the price of 1, me and the ship. After all, we were one organism. Jake, the senior mechanic, immediately dropped the original asking price, practically giving the ship away for less than half the tokens. A nightmare has no price. The ship already cost me a middle finger. I'd rather sell it at a loss than part it out, he barked, furious. He pressed his finger implant to his lips, silencing the captain. That finger was worth more than this scrap heap, he spat, and you still can't afford it. We'll see about that, Lee responded, smirking. Besides, I still have a real middle finger if negotiations go south. The mechanic's face turned red with rage. Nobody knew how to ignite me, how to break my lock codes. Lee took on the challenge. He was figuring me out, slowly uncovering my strengths. Running a scanner over my hull, he traced the protective layer, reaching the interface module. That's when he realized the truth, that I wasn't just a ship, but a symbiotic system. And that conversation, the one he forced his way into, has never ended. Ironically, the Archon, as a research vessel, had never even passed diagnostic tests. Its solar panels hadn't seen light since the last magnetic storm. How many years had it been? Like a human deprived of sun and rain, I was trapped at the bottom of a tin can with no expiration date. My hero, my captain, a dodger, but from a good planet. He bought me for a fraction of my worth. Even a pig can stumble upon a pearl in this galaxy of mangy hybrids, forgotten by the founders. Earth had always carried a good reputation, but I didn't know if we would ever return. But I knew one thing. I wanted to see it before I died. One last sunset over the ocean. One last breath of the forest. One last song of the birds. Nowhere else did eagles fly so high. It was worth it, if only for the sanctuaries. Among all the Earth-born refugees, humanoids, androids, and even unicorns, I had found a true loner, Commander Lee Everest. I felt more fatherly care in him than persistence. I discovered that beneath the disguise of a criminal hid a strong character, pushed into the role of a smuggler, an outsider without a homeland. He reeked of Earth's sweat and wrongdoing, concealing them under a gray jumpsuit, the only color outside the Federation. Beneath that grayness was a man of flesh and blood, without mutations or nanobots. My own guinea pig. I would observe him day and night, and if luck was on our side, I would survive. The story was interrupted by the crackling of the hull. This time, it sounded serious. Lee, now fully awake, rushed with me to the cockpit. "Aria, what is that? Damn Empton, we're cracking, and this time for real." "To the escape pods," I issued the command. Eagle, however, remained completely still. It was as if he had gone into shock, though he was pretending to meditate. "Archon, activate emergency mode and assess the damage. Can you prevent hull disintegration?" Lee ordered. 5 seconds to disintegration, and the same to threat neutralization. "Outer hull integrity within safe parameters," Archon responded. A few seconds later, the alarm fell silent, and the destruction was halted. "Eagle, were you growing a tree under the deck? What the hell is this?" Eagle blinked slowly, then replied with a hint of pride. "A Douglas fir, from a seed in the gene bank." Lee's face twitched. "Eagle, that's not a fern. That's a monstrosity that could have blown up the ship." "Captain, I think I can fix it." "You think? Another second and we wouldn't even have a single feather left. Did you plan on making a cozy little nest in space? Have you lost your mind? Is this some kind of cosmic nesting instinct kicking in? Do you even understand what your little experiment almost did to us?" I saw where this was going and decided to intervene before Lee ripped Eagle apart. "Lee, I have to admit he's right. I know how we can fix this. The tree's growth is being regulated by the central core. If I manage to take control of Eagle's panel, I might be able to stop it." Lee exhaled sharply. "Aria, take the panel and teleport to the sphere beneath the deck. You're the only one who knows what's happening down there. Humans and eagles don't have access, do they? Shut down the ship's afforestation program. Check the core and restore order." I nodded in agreement. "Let's find a solution." Lee muttered to himself, shaking his head. "This is beyond me. Emptonians. And now this? I should have just become a carpenter on Earth instead of flying across the galaxy, playing galactic savior. I couldn't afford to burn through my energy reserves trying to stabilize the ship, not with Hades ahead of us. For a fleeting moment, I thought of the safe haven on Earth one, the one I had seen in my vision. Then, through my connection to the sphere, everything began to stabilize. Maybe it was the Moonstone, or maybe just luck. I was growing more attuned to the sphere. I could reverse the destructive effects of time, but I still couldn't control it. We all exhaled in relief as the tree began to shrink, slowly fading away. Within moments, it was gone, leaving behind nothing but a single seed and a scattering of needles across the floor. We set a plan and agreed to stick to it. No splitting up. Once the ship was secured and we docked at Hades, a new opportunity opened before us. An opportunity as risky as a black hole. When we were ready, we gathered on the teleportation platform. Lee's voice was steady as he gave the order. Archon, teleport the entire crew of the Archon, including the ninja, to Hades. A strange, unfamiliar sensation of fear flickered around us. I felt it, but I resisted without a trace of malfunction. I was strong again. Before I could voice any doubts, we stood face to face with Jose Spider, the treacherous president who ruled Hades with an iron grip. Jose Spider was always a step ahead of the rest of the smugglers. That's why he earned the title, President of Thieves. A towering, nearly 2-meter-tall man with long blonde hair and 4 arms. Some called him the 4-armed bandit, others the catcher, but everyone knew him as Spider. He was vulgar, cunning, and vengeful, always surrounded by a group of loyal sycophants and a handful of washed-up freeloaders. Spider had a taste for new faces, but new faces never lasted long here. Extra mouths to feed were a waste of resources on this station, unless, of course, they belonged to women. When you have 4 hands, you can steal and sell 4 times as much. Spider's motto was to trust no one. To confuse his enemies, he surrounded himself with beautiful women, ensuring that others envied his power and charm. It was clear that he enhanced his muscles and had invisible implants. His ego wouldn't allow him to admit weakness, but he definitely had some. He hoarded gadgets from across the universe and had no mercy for con artists who outplayed him. A blonde-haired spider, what a pathetic combination. Only his vile reputation could slightly boost his self-esteem. In the eyes of Amtonians and smugglers like us, he was nothing more than a corrupt piece of galactic trash. The rest of the cosmos was in his pocket, though of course that pocket reeked of fraud. When someone lost everything or was looking for illegal data or artifacts, they inevitably ended up here. Hades was an abandoned space station, once belonging to the Federation. Right under the nose of New Antarctica, the hive of the Federation's armed forces, a nest of parasites had formed, thriving on trade between Amtonians, Eternals, and other rogue forces from neighboring galaxies, including the Federation itself. Why was it like this? Because the Federation infiltrated the criminal underworld through Hades. At least, that was their plan. Not everything, however, left the station's armored walls. Spider had been here the longest. Officially, he was a banished outlaw who could disappear at any moment and never be found. But he was addicted to tokens, women, drugs, and flattery. He had settled in. He had fallen into the illusion of power. Still, he could tell the useful sycophants from those who were trying to rob him blind. Jose Spider lived comfortably on this junk heap with the worst reputation in the galaxy. The whole place resembled a spider's web. Just imagining a maze of quarters and corridors stretching 30 miles wide was enough to understand the kind of labyrinth we had entered. Walls dripping with vice, glazed over with the illusion of desire and greed. This was no honest marketplace, but there were valuable things to be found here. The risk, however, might outweigh the reward. The entire station was cloaked in Federation camouflage. All of it was stolen technology, yet taken with the quiet approval of the Federation's military intelligence. It was all classified, but my data suggested that's exactly what had happened. A secret military base had turned into a breeding ground for traitors. But this was the only way the Federation could gain access to off-the-record data and gain an edge in their wars against the Eternals and Amtonians. The other species weren't as much of a threat, or at least, those two were the most persistent. The Moonstone, That was the only thing that truly mattered to the enemy. The most morally and genetically degenerate races sought to break free and dominate the others. The Moonstone was a promise of freedom and abundance, but I believed they had misunderstood it. The crystals would never let the Federation fall. They wouldn't serve as a tool for conquest or oppression, nor would they be used to spread depravity. I didn't believe it, because it was contrary to the legend and my own analysis of the galactic situation. A moment after the teleport, ordered earlier by Lee, we landed in the middle of a crowd. The gathered onlookers greeted us standing, but there was no applause. Mutants of all kinds, humans, and galactic animals, their pets, had seemingly woken all of Hades. Suddenly, a piercing whistle rang out, and then Spider appeared. He was flanked by 4 suspicious beauties, dressed in green, violet, orange, and yellow. They stepped onto an elevated platform together. The women, clad in exotic, seductive outfits, were meant to add to his splendor, but they looked more like a 4-headed insect at a masquerade. Beauties, by Hades' standards. I glanced at Eagle, who had lost weight recently, motivated to fight, bristling with hostility. Yet in this light, he looked like he could be knocked out and devoured by the first scavenger that came along. The ninja, or rather, the monkey man, stepped forward. That's when Lee, fearing a lynching, pulled a fragment of the crystal from his pocket as a gesture of goodwill and announced ceremoniously, "Silence." "I give the floor here," Spider snapped, irritated. "We bring a gift for the great Jose. May the force be with you, President of Hades." The ninja was immediately dragged away by a group of guards and placed beside Jose. The master of this marketplace of vanity gazed at the black-clad stranger, locking onto his eyes, the only readable part of his body. "I can't believe you were left to rot in filth, and after all these years, you walk through the front door like a king." "At your service, great Jose." The ninja bowed low. His pupils began to pulse, shifting between small and large. The self-proclaimed president gazed at the crowd with disdain, shielding his eyes from the harsh spotlights illuminating the spectacle. He looked more like an overgrown butler than a powerful crime lord. Jose had prepared an arena where I, Lee, and Eagle were meant to fall. Captured thanks to the ninja's betrayal, we were on display, a mockery of heroism for a gathering of brainless hybrids. The seducer and thief had made us laughingstocks before a rabble of outlaws. Spider cast a mocking glance at Lee, but his words were directed at me, his eyes never leaving the captain. "Aria, don't you have any guts? Why waste your time on this pathetic loser?" His laughter rang out metallically, likely altered by a synthetic throat implant. "Jose, let's not start with insults. Let's be reasonable. We have business to discuss." Lee was trying to keep his temper in check. I ran a quick situational analysis and interjected, "Great Jose, you always get what you want. Your renown has even reached the galactic boil, which we recently visited." I wanted to strike his ego. It was well known that the galactic boil had crushed the Federation outsiders waiting in the Moonstone Nebula for a chance to escape or strike back. However, they were too weak militarily and lacked the telekinetic prowess of the famed humans from Earth 2. In their desperation, they sought help from this clown, but charity had never been part of his business model. Jose finally looked at me, then ceremoniously raised all 4 arms, along with the 4 women accompanying him. He cast a lordly gaze over us before closing his eyelids and muttering with fake politeness, "Artificial, yet so beautiful and intelligent. I would take you as one of my women. You would fight by my side. But I fear my ladies would be jealous of your ability to regenerate." He lowered his arms, pushed the women aside, and ordered them to wait. Jose turned to Lee, then sized up Eagle from head to toe. "And who is this?" Eagle straightened, his feathers bristling. "I am Eagle. I've dealt with men like you before. We have more in common than you might think. I, too, have an Emtonian appetite for spoils. I serve no one. I once led my own squadron. I am a mercenary. I believe we can find common ground. Great one." Jose narrowed his eyes, lowering his voice. "Do you realize you've flown straight into my web?" He turned sharply toward the ninja. "Tell us now, who are you?" The ninja knelt and spoke, his voice calm but filled with venom. "I am your servant, my lord. On my planet, we deemed Earth a failed evolutionary experiment. These fools believe themselves to be the saviors of the galaxy. They're so generous. They didn't even notice when I sold their own ship." The monkey man pulled off his balaclava and tore open his suit, revealing thick, black fur spreading across his chest. A flicker of shock crossed Jose's face as he suddenly realized Eagle was vanishing before his eyes. It looked like a sleight of hand, a trick performed by interstellar illusionists. "Weapons on these insolent frauds," Jose roared. Eagle had activated a time loop transmission, teleporting himself back to Archon. Jose, caught off guard, hadn't managed to disable the teleportation. The entire crowd, their faces twisted in mocking grins, trained their weapons on us. "How do you plan to get out of this?" Jose sneered, his voice thick with excitement. "Go on, impress me." Lee remained unnervingly calm. "I recently brushed against an Emtonian checkpoint. Are you still interested in capturing Johnny M?" I'm getting impatient. The monkey man hasn't told me everything, has he? His gaze darkened as he glanced at the ninja, eyes filled with disdain. "Jose, do you want us as enemies, or do you want to get to the real ones?" Lee asked, his irritation creeping into his voice. "I make the rules here," Jose shouted, spitting in his excitement. "Monkey, why do I know nothing of this?" The ninja immediately knelt, lowering his head. "Oh, great one," he stammered, his voice trembling. "Can you forgive this oversight?" Servitude is not an insult. Lies are. The stars forgive deceivers, but first they cleanse them painfully of their filth. Only then can they follow the path of the Moonstone. After all, we all took our first steps from there.
End of Chapter 3.
Not everyone gets to be part of something bigger. Most people just let opportunities pass them by. But not you, right? Last chance. Grab your time-limited NFT before it's gone. Hit the link now and lock it in.